Recording it. Okay, so as you can see, I interviewed Mark Peterson. He is the water master of the Delta Canal Company. That's the canal company that irrigates the fields that we were modeling, and so I thought that was pretty cool. So come to PowerPoint. Okay, there we go. Okay, so as you guys know, it's in central Utah in Miller County. Um, I have it zoomed in right here. So that's the whole canal company. Those are the main irrigation ditches uh, that feed all the smaller ones. For some reason, the map wouldn't highlight the littler ones, so that's what we get is the big main ones in the map. But the purpose of this interview was to gain a better understanding of the Delta Canal Company, and how it works and functions, and what other things we learned in the water balance system and how that applies to Delta. And so here's my interview. Let's see. Where do I do the volume?
Just to the map.
Okay. I'll restart it. So just like to get us started, how long have you been the water master for?
So just starting now, which we're just starting the 2024 season. This is my 14th year.
Nice. Wow, that's quite a bit of time. So you got this under control, I bet.
Well, no, every year it changes, and water is so unpredictable. So you just gotta.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain things we can be ready for, and then there's just that element of we kind of roll with it and we react to it. But yeah, I'm excited to get going again. The winter's been long.
Yeah, yeah, it has. So, is this like a job that you enjoy doing?
I do. It gives me purpose and it keeps me connected to the community because the water is such a vital part of this community. And the 120 farmers that I work with, the friendships and the associations that I have it's priceless to me.
So, how is it that well, do the farmers get their water on a fixed rotation, or is it kind of border based, or what kind of system is there?
So everything that I'm in charge of, the area that I oversee is flood irrigation, and we have diversion reservoirs upstream, so to say, that collects that water, and then that water distributes down in a series of large canals into my system. So a farmer will, when they're ready for a crop, they'll give me 2 or 3 days notice, and I keep records, kind of a roster, and I run two large systems. So I have kind of a north and a south system as far as where the farms sit. They'll order the water and kind of give me a heads up to give me a little bit of time and let me know when they're ready for the water. And that's my job to make sure I hit them as close to that date as possible. Sometimes they're a little early, so they'll get early, but it's just a matter of having the water available in our system, which is a big canal and distributes into 112 miles of smaller ditches, cement ditches, dirt ditches, and pipe ditches. And I'll distribute the water and deliver to the different farms.
Yeah.
Based on order schedule.
Okay, awesome. So you just mentioned that there's cement ditches, dirt ditches, and pipe ditches. Is there one of those that you prefer to work with?
As far as actually running the water, for me, they're kind of all the same. Where the cement ditches or the pipe ditches may be a little easier for preparing the system in the spring, because obviously there's burning, there's a lot of burning, there's a lot of prep work. Ditch dirt ditches have a lot more debris and a lot more sediment. There are a lot more there's a lot more maintenance involved. We do have to pour cement on a cement ditch, but there's just, I think, the convenience of not having to maintain a ditch if it's cemented or piped. And those pipe ditches they're so nice. They're just really expensive to put in.
Okay. Well, awesome.
So yeah, the newer pipe ditches, that's the way to go. It's certainly the best. Cement would be second, and then in some places where we can't maybe maintain those, because we have to be able to get to the ditches, and we do have the ditch where the only option is really a dirt ditch.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And so you also mentioned that you keep like a list of people and like when they're wanting water. Do you use like a specific tool for that, or do you just write it down in a notebook, or?
The best way to do it, because there's so much changes in water and there's so much out of my control. I have a list, a large legal pad, and I rewrite and change that list several times during the day. And that seems to be the best thing for me, and mostly because on occasion I have to show that list to my farmers. I have to say, hey, this is kind of where I'm at. And the software I had, unless we installed that on everybody's phones or computers, which was going to get pretty costly, I just keep a notebook.
So, what kind of issues or challenges do you face during like the peak of the season? Like, what are the main challenges you face?
The biggest thing is, I think, making sure that we kind of have the water at the ready, and using accurate math, using physics, using digital measuring devices, we've been able to show and run a lot more water in the system than we had done historically. So when demand gets really pushed, I need to make sure I've got the water, the amount of water, which can sometimes be quite a large flow, we call them. So farmers, when they're in those critical places, because weather is so, it changes, and if weather is a factor in farming, they can't really predict. So if their grains or certain crops are in a place where they might have thought there could be 2 or 3 more days before they actually needed that flood irrigation on their field, if all of a sudden things turned off really hot and there was a change in the weather, waiting 3 or 4 days could be really critical. It's a game changer to their bottom line as far as the money to be made. So to have this large amount of water ready for me is real critical and challenging sometimes, trying to guess what the farmers might need, what weather conditions do. And then the other thing is trying to get, farmers, maybe sometimes I'll prod them a little bit or say, hey, we really need to get you done ahead of, if they're watering hay, which isn't such a critical crop, because I've got this large amount, there's 1,000 acres or more of another crop that needs to get wet, because the system, some of the laterals can only hold so many streams of water. And if the demand is bigger than what the capacity allows, then sometimes farmers, if they're behind that 8 ball and they're slower calling, they might be waiting a week to 10 days, which at certain times of the summer can get real critical. So that seems to be kind of a push for me. Gets real taxing, kind of wears my down, because it's a 24/7 run to try to keep up with that. So that's really the only thing, and it's usually only a couple of months of the 7 months, or really a push like that.
So you mentioned that you like have gauge. Well, you use information from gauges and whatnot. Um, how how you how do you use those gauges? Like,
So I carry a couple of different, they're called flow probes, and I can take a digital velocity reading, measuring the current of water in a certain, like if it's a trapezoid ditch, if it's a round ditch, whatever it is, we can be extremely accurate on the stream size. And so, just even in the last 10 years, at least in this area, we've kind of pioneered a new method of measuring. We'll attach a porcelain staff gauge onto the side of the ditch, and that will show so the farmers can kind of have a universal reading of what their stream size is. But those staff gauges now are set there based on the math and the physics and the our accurate way of measuring. And so it's a lot different, but it's also a lot easier because it's eliminated all the guessing. And so it's really easy to measure streams now. I think there was a lot of time spent kind of trying to figure out accurate streams and losses, and now we use math and it's simple and it's fast.
So another question I have, are you able to tell the difference when there's been a lot of snow and rainfall between just like a normal year?
Typically, I think I see what you're saying. I think so. Again, so we've been in this drought, right, for about roughly 10 years. So on normal years, and I spend a lot of time in the mountains. So looking at seeps and looking at springs that occur in kind of high elevation areas on the mountains. When our aquifers down here in the flatlands started to dwindle and drop, and when those water reserves, wherever they would be, when everything started to really dry up in Millard County, we got really dry here. So even though we had some years where we had record snowfall like last year, the state was urging us to start running water early because they were worried about flooding in all these communities. So, but because the aquifers were so low, so that isn't always just because we get a high snowpack, just because we have heavy snow, we have lots of rain or whatever the moisture is in the winter. If we're dry and we kind of live in this desert a little bit, it takes some years to cycle back. And I think now this year, finally, after all these wet years, because, for example, last year they issued all that water and we were ready for this big runoff and everything. So we actually issued more credits to the farmers than what we actually had physical water for. So with that record snow, and even the year before was a pretty good winter, that we would have saw that benefit, but that isn't always the case. So we're hopeful this year, based on a wet year, that we could have a better run, but that's not always the case. It's funny how that works.
I just have one more question for you, and then I'll be out of your hair. What do you think the future will be like for the canal company? Like, do you think there will be any technological advances or moving on to sprinklers or anything like that?
We can't have losses. So much. And going forward, I think things like sprinkling, I think things like drip systems, I think things that show that as a group of farmers, we are not so selfish with this public resource, but we're really exploring new options to save critical water, because if we don't, we're going to lose it, because it's happened in states all around us. We've got so used to having this 3 to 4 inch flood irrigation, having all that water run down these levees, which is it's an amazing thing that we have that resource, and it's the reason we can grow the crops that we do. But we're seeing in certain applications where farmers are doing a drip system and sprinklers, and the yields and the returns are amazing. And we're being very, very protective of the resource. So that's the one thing that I see, that's the most critical and changing going forward, is just getting really smart with how we use this water. That's the only way to continue to have it. Well, that question.
That answered it perfectly.
Okay.
Well, that was great. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it.
Good to talk to you.
Oh. How do I move on now? Right now. Okay. So just to get There we go. Thank you. So, in summary, farmers receive their water on an order basis. They use all sorts of ditches there. They use dirt, cement, and they have a couple non-pressurized pipelines that they use to transport the water. Many water measurement tools they use are lasers, those porcelain clay floats, and flow probes. And like you said, the future will be looking for ways to save water, um, whether it be drip irrigation, sprinklers, or just something new that ends up being invented or come up with. Um, are there any questions?